Hello and welcome to Tap That MTG, the show where we tell you everything we know about Magic the Gathering that's probably wrong, but fun to talk about. I'm Shauna.
And I'm Leslie.
And today we are excited to bring you the Commander deep dives that we love to do so much. There's new Commander decks again, woohoo, for the Midnight Hunt that's just come out. So we are going to, in today's video, we're going to cover Coven counters. And we're going to tell you about this deck and what it does, what it's meant to do, what's in it, and some suggestions at the end. If you hang out with us, we'll suggest some cards that we think might work well with this deck. So in the meantime here, Leslie, can you tell us about this deck's commander, and what this deck is all about?
I would love to. So this deck ultimately is one of those counter decks that is meant to go wide and have lots of humans and lots of angels. And then once you have them on the battlefield, they get buffed up and made really big by each other. So our commander is Leonore, the Autumn Sovereign. She is a human noble for 4. She's just a 0/4. But she has this new mechanic called Coven. And at the beginning of combat for this Coven, on your turn, put a 1/1 counter on it. If you have a target creature, or on target creature, then if you control 3 or more creatures with different powers, you get to draw a card. So basically, Coven is like a keyword ability. Most of the Coven ones have this little, like, if you control something that has, like, creatures that have 3 or more different power levels. So you want to keep your power levels at different levels, and then good things happen for you. So this has 2. You get a 1/1 counter on something at the beginning of your combat phase. So you get to kind of play with that a little bit and decide where to put it. And then you get this other thing if you have 3 or more with different powers. So should be a super fun deck to play. I am excited about it based on what we went through. But before we tell people what's in this deck and how kind of they should all work together, what does the deck breakdown look like for this?
So based on the mana curve for this deck, most decks follow some sort of curve, and so the mana value in this one is a little on the high side, but we'll talk about that here in a second. So we have 4 cards at 1, 8 at 2 mana cost, 17 at 3, and then we have 9 at 4, 14 at 5, and 11 at 6+. So that's 25 at 5 and up. So that's a little on the high side, but that's okay. It's Commander, and we like to do that sort of thing. It's green after all.
We have some time to build.
We've got color breakdown. It's, speaking of green, it's about 36% green. So 23, and then 26 white, 8 multicolor, and 6 colorless. And then we've got, as far as card types go, this is a creature-heavy deck, which is no surprise. It is Celestia, green and white, after all. So 39 creatures, 14 sorceries and instants, 4 enchantments, and the 8 artifacts, or is it 6? Leslie, I can't quite see.
6.
It's 6.
Our old lady eyes. Yeah.
The old lady eyes, I got the glasses on my head, but why use them, right? Anyway.
Why use them?
So that's the card type breakdown. So we're going to go into the deck, and as we usually do, we're going to tell you a little bit about the formula that we use, but I'll let Leslie tell you about what that formula is.
I would love to. It's such a fun little formula. So just a little caveat right at the beginning, this is not the formula, it is a formula. This formula we found, we didn't make up ourselves, but it does seem to fit very well with a casual level, mid-level deck, which means most of the precons that Wizards puts out are very close to this formula. So if you're looking to build a mid-range deck, this is how you can start. And so that's why we evaluate the decks based on this. and tweak the decks based on this. So you're going to, of course, want one commander. We recommend about 15 in ramp. That can be really high in some decks, but you can play with any of these back and forth, a couple numbers. A removal around 15. You don't ever want to be stuck with only one card in your hand, so 13 card draw. And then the meat and potatoes of your deck is going to be your high impact cards. These are cards that win you the game. They're just, oh my gosh, I can't believe that card does that kind of card. So try and have about 12 of those. And then 10 that support your overall theme or have other win conditions or something like that. And then we recommend around 34 land. Some people like 40, some people think 34 is just way too low, but you can again tweak that. Most of the commander decks that come out in precons have between 38 and 40 in them, and we find that that's a really good place to start tweaking, but that can again be up to you. So that's the sections we're going to break this deck down in and talk to you about what they have in those. So our first section is what, Shauna?
Our first section is ramp and mana generators. You need that to get the game going. So we're going to get going with that. So the formula calls for 15. And in this deck, there are about 11, according to our little bit of calculations there. So the very first one, of course, is Soul Ring for 1. It's 2 mana.
My favorite card. Talisman of Unity has a 2 mana cost, and this one just taps for 1, but it has the added benefit that you can add a forest or a plains to your mana pool if you do 1 damage to yourself. Now, your life total is a resource, so that's a good way to kind of fix your mana and get that mana that you need.
Mm-hmm. Then we have the new commander staple called Arcane Signet. So turn 1 Soul Ring and Arcane Signet is really, really good.
Really good. Everyone hates you.
Right? Yes, it does happen occasionally. So yeah, for 2, it's an artifact that taps for any color of your commander's identity. So it's perfect for a commander deck.
And this next card, Moon Silver Key, is a new card that came out with this Midnight Hunt. It's an artifact for 2. This art on this is really weird. If I'm looking at it correctly, it's an angel with no head holding up a pool of, I don't know. It's really weird. Strange. But what does it do, you say? Well, for 1 in tapping it, you can sacrifice it to search your library for an artifact card with a mana ability or a basic land card, reveal it, put it into your hand and shuffle. I love this because it's not just the typical like search for a basic land mana ramp. You can go search for your Soul Ring or your Arcane Signet that get you your fixing that you need, or some of these other signets that are out there. So that's a nice little kind of fun thing that they threw in.
Yeah. Knight of the White Orchid. I always want to say wild on this one. I don't know why.
Because he looks wild.
It's maybe it's a 2/2 for 2 white pips, a creature that has first strike. But when he enters the battlefield, if an opponent controls more lands than you may search your library for a plains card, put it onto the battlefield, then shuffle. So that could be any opponent, which in Commander could be, you could easily have someone that has lots of lands before this guy comes out. So it's just a great card.
Definitely. And then Growth Spasm for 2 in a green is a sorcery. You search your library for a basic land card, put it onto the battlefield tapped, then shuffle your library. You also get to put a 0/1 colorless Eldrazi Spawn creature token onto the battlefield. So not only do you get to, and it has sacrificed this creature to add 1 mana. So not only do you get to go search for a land, you get to get this little Eldrazi Spawn that can be used for a blocker or to go search for it. You use it for a blocker and sacrifice it as you block, which a lot of new players don't realize they can do. So just so you know, you can block, and then before damage is done, you can sacrifice it for that mana.
Avacyn's Pilgrim for 1 green. It's a 1/1. It's been around for a long time. That taps to add a plains to your mana pool. So it's a good little dork.
Yeah, it's a weird dork because it has like the different colored mana. So it doesn't tap for green. Yeah. Gyre Sage for 1 in a green is an elf druid 1/2. It has evolve, which means that whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, if that creature has a greater power or toughness than this creature, you get to put a 1/1 counter on it. So it just gets bigger. And you get to add 1 mana for each 1/1 counter on it. So there's the mana ramp that goes in that.
Awesome.
You want to make him big, and then you get to tap him for however many counters are on it, which is great.
Yeah. Somberwald Sage for 2 and a green. It's a 0/1 human druid that you can tap and add 3 mana of any one color in your mana pool. But you have to spend that money. Spend that mana only to cast creature spells, which you have lots of. So this is a really good card.
It's a very creature heavy deck. Yeah. And then Celebrate the Harvest. Oh, lovely dancing going on there. You get to search your library for X basic land cards, where X is the number of different types of power among creatures you control. And then you put those cards onto the battlefield tapped, then shuffle. So again, takes advantage of all the different, having things of different powers. You want to keep the 1/1 counters going on different things just to kind of keep those power levels separate.
Heronblade Elite is a new card, I believe. It's for 2 and a green, a 1/1 with vigilance. And whenever another human enters the battlefield under your control, put a 1/1 counter on this elite card. And then you get to add X mana of any one color, where X is its power. So by itself, it's 1 mana already, but you're going to have lots of humans coming out and buffing this guy up. I think we're going to need to get rid of that.
Yeah. So all in all, our mana ramp is a decent number. We have 11 out of 15, and they're good ones. So we're right on par where we need to be with this deck. Our next section is removal. The formula that we use calls for 15, and this deck, in our opinion, has 11. The first one being a commander staple, Beast Within. For 2 and a green, it's an instant, and you get to destroy target permanent. Its controller creates a 3/3 beast creature token. For those of you that are new to Magic, we always like to say instants are for combat. So just because you can kill something or destroy something doesn't mean you have to. Sometimes it's good, especially with the politics of Commander, to wait and see, like, if they're not really attacking you with that thing, maybe they can do some work killing your opponents off. Or you could use it to try and like help someone else out, just to kind of create friends in another place. So try and use that at the right time.
Mm-hmm. Angel of Glory's Rise is a 4/6 flying angel for 5 and 2 white. When it enters the battlefield, exile all zombies, then return all human creature cards from your graveyard to the battlefield. So the other deck in this happens to be some zombies. So putting these two against each other, that's going to be bad.
Yeah.
For the zombies. So plus it's a 4/6 flyer.
Yeah.
With all the humans coming back.
Swords to Plowshares is another instant staple. For 1 white, you get to just exile a target creature. Its controller gains life equal to its power. So because it's such a low mana cost, they get a little bit of an extra bonus, but sometimes you just really need to exile that creature and not destroy it and put it in their graveyard. So
yeah. Return to Dust for 2 and 2 white. It is an instant that exile target artifact or enchantment. If you cast a spell during main phase, you may exile up to 1 other target artifact or enchantment. So you're going to try to use that card to the best of its ability there.
Mm-hmm. And our first creature that has some removal is Audric, Master Tactician. He's 2 and 2 white pips for a 3/4. He's got first strike. And the reason we put him in removal is because whenever Audric, Master Tactician, and at least 3 other creatures attack, you choose which creatures block this combat and how those creatures block. So this allows you a little bit of control over whether they're blocking at all, or perhaps you want to kill something of theirs, and so you get to choose what to block.
Alrighty, and then we have Cleansing Nova, which saved the game for me the other day.
Sure did.
For 3 and 2 white, choose one was destroy all creatures or destroy all artifacts and enchantments. And I certainly didn't want to just destroy creatures. I just destroyed all of his enchantments and artifacts, which was kind of mean, but it won me the game because I still had my stuff.
Yeah,
so,
got to have some good board wipes. Here's another one, Hour of Reckoning, 4 and 3 white pips, which is hard to cast because those white pips, but it does have Convoke, which is nice. You can use your creatures to tap them for the colorless, so up to 4, and you get to just destroy all non-token creatures. So the nice thing about this is this deck does create some tokens, and you'll get to keep your tokens, because it only destroys the non-token creatures, but it will destroy yours. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. Celestial Judgment has some cool wolves on this one. It's for 4 and 2 white, a sorcery that for each different power among creatures on the battlefield, choose a creature with that power and destroy each creature not chosen this way. So your deck you're trying to have lots of different powers. So you're going to keep some stuff and get rid of some of the other things. So that's kind of nice too.
Mm-hmm. And then Curse of Conformity. This is the first of the curses that we get to talk about with these commander decks. Everyone loves a good curse. For 4 and a white, enchant player. Non-legendary creatures enchanted players control have a base power and toughness of 3/3 and lose all creature types. So if they're playing zombies or they're playing some kind of crazy tribal thing, all of a sudden they don't get buffs from other zombies you control or other elves you control have the pluses and minuses, and their base power and toughness is 3/3, which when you're playing against elves is not a good thing, but when you're playing against big beasties, it is a really good thing. So you're going to want to choose who to put this on properly, but that definitely can impede someone's progress.
Definitely. Curse of the Clinging Webs for 2 and a green. Leslie really doesn't like this card. Yeah. It looks like some spider webs going on here. Yeah.
So gross.
Whenever a non-token creature enchanted player controls dies, exile it, and you get to create a 1/2 green spider creature token with reach. So you get to make some spiders for all their stuff that you're getting rid of.
Nice. And it's exiled, so you can't come back from their graveyard, which is great. That's a great curse. Ruinous Intrusion for 3 and a green is an instant. Yeah, it's gorgeous. Shauna likes her wolfies. Exile target artifact or enchantment, and then you get to put X/1/1 counters on a target creature you control, where X is the mana value of the permanent exiled this way. So not only are you able to get rid of something, you also get a bunch of 1/1 counters that you can distribute onto your dude.
The gourd carving was supposed to take place after the feast. Carving.
Always read the flavor text.
Too funny. So we have card draw and tutors is our next section. So the formula calls for 13 and the deck has 5. But if you recall, your commander does card draw quite a bit there. So that may or may not need some tweaking. The first card we have is our faithful Yavimaya Elder for 1 and 2 green, a 2/1. That when he dies, you may search your library for up to 2 basic line cards, reveal them, and put them on in your hand, then shuffle. And you can pay 2 and sacrifice it and draw a card. So you're going to be helpful for there.
Definitely. Inspiring Call for 2 and a green is another instant that allows you to draw a card for each creature you control with a 1/1 counter on it. So this is going to fill your hand back up. You don't want to if you have to use it when you only have one creature with a 1/1 counter, then you have to use it. But the other benefit of this is those creatures gain indestructible till the end of turn. So you can swing away and then use this to make all your dudes indestructible when they least expect it, and then get to fill up your hand with cards, which is great.
Shamanic Revelation for 3 and 2 green. This has draw a card for each creature type you control. Each creature you control. I'm not sure where type came from, but yeah, so that I have used that before. That is really, really good. Ferocious, you gain 4 life for each creature you control with power 4 or greater. So this card can do some work for you.
And if you have 10, that fills you back up. I don't know the likelihood of that in this deck yet, but you're going to make them big. So Lifecrafter's Bestiary is our next one for 3. It's an artifact. At the beginning of your upkeep, you get to scry. So it is a continual scry every upkeep. Which I always forget. So if you need a fun tip for that, if you put like a dice or something on your deck it'll remind you need to do something on your upkeep. When you cast a creature spell, you get to pay 1, and if you do so, you can draw a card. So not only do you get some information, you get to draw a card. This is such a great card for Commander.
For green, yeah. Wall of Mourning, it's a 0/4 for 1 and a white. Wall that has Defender. When it enters the battlefield, exile a card from the top of your library face down for each opponent you have. And then you have Coven. So at the beginning of your end step, if you control 3 or more creatures with different powers, there we are again, put a card exiled with Wall of Mourning into its owner's hand. So, a nice little hand for you somewhere.
Nice little way to get some cards.
Yeah.
All right. So the next section is the fun section that we all love, which is our high impact cards, the ones that win you the game. The formula calls for 12. This deck, in our opinion, has 19 that are high impact. Some of these fit into the other sections, which is why they might be removal or have some card draw on them, but we put them in this section because they are just really high impact. So the first one is Death Presence for 5 and a green. Whenever a creature you control dies, you get to put X/1/1 counters on a target creature you control, where X is the power of the creature that died. Remembering that if that creature already had a bunch of 1/1 counters on it to increase its power, you get to count that as part of its power as well. So if it's a 19/19 because it had a bunch of 1/1 counters, essentially those 1/1 counters are just moving to something else.
Scary.
Yeah.
Citadel Siege for 2 and 2 white. It is the enchantment that says, as it enters the battlefield, choose cons or dragons. Cons at the beginning of your combat on your turn. You get to put 2 1/1 counters on target creature you control all the time. Or if you choose dragons at the beginning of combat on each opponent's turn, you get to tap a target creature that player controls. So you have some options there for every combat phase.
And in this deck, would you say that you would probably recommend choosing cons over dragons? I mean, there's always situations, but
yeah, cons would probably be your most useful tool for this one. Yeah.
Custody Soulbinder for 3 and a white is a 0/0, but why is it a 0/0? It's because it enters the battlefield with X/1/1 counters on it, where X is the number of other creatures on the battlefield. And then you can pay 2 and a white to remove a 1/1 counter from it and create a 1/1 white spirit creature token with flying. So again, this is going to gain counters throughout the game. You can remove counters. It comes in with the number of counters based on how many creatures. It's just going to do a lot of work for you in this game if you can keep it on the battlefield.
This card I've always wanted to make work somewhere. So I'm happy to see it here in Biogenic Upgrade for 4 and 2 green. It is a sorcery, and it's distribute 3 +1/+1 counters among 1, 2, or 3 target creatures. Then double the number of +1 counters on each of those creatures. So yeah, I've wanted to make this work, but it always seemed too expensive for 4 and 2 green. But in this deck, it might prove worthy.
I like that it has the option to do 1, 2, or 3 because in this deck, you want things with different powers. So it kind of fits really well. Elite Scale Guard for 4 and a white is a 2/3, and when it enters the battlefield, you get to bolster. So what is bolster, for those of you who don't know? It has bolster 2, which means you get to choose the creature with the least toughness among creatures you control and put 2 1/1 counters on it. If it was bolster 6, then you would put 6 1/1 counters on it. So, and you just choose whatever's the lowest when it comes in. And then whenever a creature you control with a 1/1 counter on it attacks, you get to tap a target creature defending player controls. So that thing that they just have up that is making it impossible for you to swing in, you can now tap it if you have this, guys.
Exactly. Enoch Bondkin for 1 and a green. It's a 2/1 with Outlast for 1 and a green, 1 and a white. Sorry. Outlast is 1 and a white, and each creature you control with a +1/+1 counter on it has first strike. So Outlast, if I recall, is you can Play it again? No. What is Outlast again? I
Yeah,
forget.
it's a keyword ability, and it allows a creature to grow larger over time. So basically, the rule says it's an activated ability, which means that cost, you put a 1/1 counter on this creature. Activate only as a sorcery. So basically, it just has, you pay, in this case, you get to pay 2, and then you get to put a 1/1 counter on it.
Okay. So then that creature, yeah, okay. So then that would give that one first strike, which is cool.
Automatically right off the bat. You can give it first strike, and then it gives everything else that has 1/1 counters on it +1/+1, which is great. What's the difference between, for those that are new, 1/1 counter and just +1/+1?
So a +1/+1 counter is a physical extra bonus put onto that creature or card, and that stays there. Whereas a +1/+1 from something else, so a vampire card that gives all other vampires +1/+1, if that original vampire that's doing that goes away, those creatures no longer have that +1/+1. So it's just a temporary buff from that other card.
Yeah, so it is kind of hard sometimes to keep track of that. And I know a lot of new players like to put, or seasoned players like to put that +1/+1 on there for the other things that are on their battlefield. So I think I would recommend, I'm not sure if you agree, Shauna, but using different colored dice for those, and then that way your opponents know what is an actual counter that I can remove, or that that has, meaning, and what is just a buff that I might be able to remove by getting rid of another card. So just makes it a little bit more clear.
Or there's those little circle things that came with a bunch of different sets that were little punch outs, and a bunch of those were +1/+1. Oh, they came with Ikoria. A bunch of them had +1/+1. You could use something like that, because it's really just to help you remember that there's also a +1 from the vampire lord over there, right?
Yeah.
So,
and Abzan Falconer is the exact same thing. It's a 2/3 for 3 mana. It has Outlast 1, and then each creature you control with a +1/+1 counter on it has flying in this case.
Oh my god!
Which would be awesome.
So good.
So good. Does a lot of work.
Zagarda, Heron's Grace, 4/5 for 3, a green and a white. Beautiful angel that has flying, and you and other humans you control have hexproof. Oh boy. That's going to be good. Pay 2 and exile a card from your graveyard and put a 1/1 human soldier creature token onto the battlefield. Why not?
Yeah,
right?
Why not? Why not? Ooh. Wild Beastmaster hanging off a giant horse, it looks like, for 2 and a green. It's a little 1/1. And whenever it attacks, each other creature you control gets +X/+X until the end of turn, where X is Wild Beastmaster's power. So this is one that you're going to want to put some 1/1 counters on, and then you're going to want to keep putting 1/1 counters on, because it's going to buff everything else up.
Dearly Departed for 5/5. It's a 5/5 for 4 and 2 white. It's a flying spirit. Yay, a flying spirit.
I know, right?
That has as long as Dearly Departed is in your graveyard. Each human creature you control enters the battlefield with an additional +1/+1 counter on it. So it's going to do work for you even when it's dead, which is nice.
So, fun aside, you know how we always think of spirits and how they should all be flying because ghosts are supposed to fly. But then I started thinking, well, maybe that's why these angry spirits that people see are so angry, because they died and they thought they were going to get to fly, and they can't. Off. They can't fly, so now they're mad. Yeah. Anyways, Herald of I would be mad. Herald of War is a 5 mana cost flying angel that's a 3/3, but when it attacks, you get to put a 1/1 counter on it, so it's just going to keep getting bigger. Angel spells and human spells you cast cost 1 less to cast for each 1/1 counter on it. So not just 1 less to cast, but 1 less to cast for each creature. So this card is just going to keep getting better and better and better, and it will be a target on the battlefield.
So will this one, Micus the Lunarch. It is a 0/0 for X and a white, and it is enters the battlefield with X +1 counters on it. You can tap it to put a +1 counter on it. That's all you have to do is tap it. You don't have to pay. Or you can tap it and remove a counter from it and put a counter on each other creature you control.
Crazy.
Oh boy.
Crazy. Yeah. Viceroy's Envoy for 3 and 2 white is another 3/3 that at the beginning of your upkeep, you get to put a 1/1 counter on each creature you control.
Other.
Yeah.
Creature.
Other. So super high impact, another really great card. This one is crazy. Shauna's favorite.
Champion of Landbolt's one of my favorite cards. Yes, I have a few copies of it. It's 1 and 2 green, a 1/1 little human warrior. What's the big deal? But it says creatures with power less than Champion of Landbolt's power can't block creatures you control. Oh, whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, you get to put a counter on. So that's even tokens, folks. That's even tokens. So you put a counter on Champion of Landbolt. So 10 counters on this chickie, and you have anything that's power 10 or less. Or yeah, they can't block. They can't block your stuff.
Yeah,
you have that. That's awesome.
Yeah, you have an 11/11, right? With 10 counters. Crazy. They can't block you.
Can't block in.
Kyler, so now we're getting into our new Midnight Hunt commander cards. So Kyler, Zagardian Emissary for 3 and a green and a white is a 2/2 that has whenever other humans enter the battlefield under your control, put a 1/1 counter on him. And then other humans you control get +1/+1 for each counter on Kyler. So there's a lot of humans in this deck. It's going to have a lot of high synergy with this card. You're going to keep putting humans in, making them bigger, and then they all get not +1/+1 counters, but they get +1/+1 for each counter on this dude. So,
whoa. Moorland Rescuer for 5 and a white. It is a 4/4 that when it dies, return any number of other creature cards with total power X or less from your graveyard to the battlefield, where X is Moorland Rescuer's power. And you have to exile the rescuer. But yeah, so minimum you're going to get stuff that is mana cost creature cards with total power 4 or less. Yeah.
The flavor text on this is kind of funny too. Hold on tight, little one. I'll get you to safety. It's fitting.
Yeah.
So Zagarda's Vanguard. Zagarda seems to be the theme for this deck. For 4 and a white, you get a 3/3. So again, 5 mana cost 3/3. So why? Number one, it has flash, so you can play it at any time. It has flying, and when it enters the battlefield or attacks, you get to choose any number of creatures with different power, and those creatures gain double strike until the end of the turn. Again, you want to play this during combat after they've declared blockers and they don't realize. Because if you play it beforehand, then they can decide what they want to block. Yeah. You want them to be like, okay, I think I can stay alive. I don't need to block everything. And then boom, it has double strike. So...
too powerful. Stalwart Pathlighter for 2 and a white. It's a 3/1 with vigilance that has Coven. At the beginning of combat on your turn, if you control 3 or more creatures with different powers, creatures you control gain indestructible until end of turn. That's going to be really handy when you're swinging all this stuff.
Every single combat. That's awesome. And then Zagardian Zealot for 4 and a green is another 3/3. And then at the beginning of combat on your turn, you choose any number of creatures with different powers, and each of them gets +X and gains vigilance until the end of turn, where X is Zagardian Zealot's power. So again, if all of these are kind of like synergizing together, you're going to have vigilance, you're going to have first strike, you're going to have flying, you're going to have double strike, you're going to have indestructible, and you're just going to keep swinging hard and fast and win the game quickly, hopefully.
So you see where this mana curve is high, but you're getting quite the payback on some of these cards.
So you're going to want to probably sit, I mean, we're getting into another section, but you're probably going to want to sit quietly while you're building and not, be too inconspicuous.
That's what I do.
Yeah. And I always try to point it out.
Don't miss out what's going on over there. Oh dear.
All right. What's our next section, Shauna?
Our next section is other cards on theme or other win conditions, stuff that fits in with the deck to help you win the game, but not crazy overpowered like some of those other cards that you saw. So the first one, the formula calls for about 10 of those. The deck has about 16. And so there's some flexibility there of what you can do where if you think that there's something that's missing, maybe you can take something out of this section or do something different with it. So the first one is a Bastion Protector for 2 and a white. It's a 3/3. And commander creatures you control get +2/+2 and have indestructible. So a little bit of you want to make sure you can keep your commander on the
That's where
battlefield.
your
So
card draw is coming from. So you need it.
Yep, exactly.
Bestial Menace for 3 and 2 green is a sorcery. This one just supports a lot of the cards with Coven that require three different creatures with different size, power, and toughness. So it gets you a 1/1, a 2/2, and a 3/3, snake, wolf, and elephant. So it's just a nice way to get some stuff on the battlefield.
Yeah. So Trostani's Summoner is a little 1/1 for 5 and a green and a white. So whoa, for 7 it's a 1/1. So what the heck? It says when it enters the battlefield, put a 2/2 white knight creature token with vigilance out, a 3/3 green centaur creature token, and a 4/4 green rhino token. So it's another one of those cards that supports that, having 3 creatures with different power.
Yeah.
Right there.
And when we talk about things being on curve, like this card is on curve, usually you want to pay you pay 2 for a 2/2, 3 for a 3/3. So if you think about it, you're getting 9 power for this, and you're only paying 7. Actually, you're getting 10 power because you get the 1/1 as well. So
Right.
You're getting 10 power for 7. So this is actually a really good mana cost, even though it looks like it's high because it's 7. Yeah. If you had to pay for each of those things.
Yeah.
Juniper Order Ranger for 3 and a green and a white is a 2/4, and whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, you put a 1/1 counter on that creature and a 1/1 counter on Juniper Ranger. So this is in a lot of decks. The reason we didn't put it into high impact is because the other ones were just way better than this one. This is just kind of a nice support card. I wouldn't remove this card though.
Enduring Scale Lord is a 4/4 dragon for 4 and a green and a white that whenever one or more +1 counters are put on another creature you control, so lots, you may put a +1 counter on this guy. He's a 4/4 flyer.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Every time you get counter, so does he.
Crazy. Oh.
Eternal Witness is 1 and a green for a 2/1, and when it enters the battlefield, you may return a target card from your graveyard to your hand. There's going to be a lot of things that you want to keep on your battlefield that will be targets, as we talked about already. So this is just a great way to get that thing back.
All right, and then we have an Orzhov Advocate for 2 and a white. It's a 1/4 that human advisor. At the beginning of your upkeep, each player may put 2 +1 counters on a creature they control. If the player does, creatures that player controls can't attack you or planeswalkers you control until your next turn.
Yeah. It's a great political card.
There's the political card for Leslie there. I'm going to give you some stuff. But.
Huron's Grace Champion for 2 and a white and a green is a 3/3 with flash and lifelink. And when it enters the battlefield, other humans you control get +1/+1 and gain lifelink until the end of turn. Again, it has flash, so it allows you to just be like, I'm going to block with everything, and then I'm going to give them all +1/+1 and lifelink. So
here's another human knight as well. Riders of Gavany for 2 and 2 white pips. It's a 3/3 with vigilance. As it enters the battlefield, choose a creature type. Human creatures you control have protection from creatures of the chosen type. Oh.
This deck's good against tribal.
Yeah.
Kessage Cage Breaker for 4 and a green is a human rogue, 3/4. And when it attacks, you get to create a 2/2 green wolf creature token that's tapped and attacking for each creature card in your graveyard. So when it attacks, it doesn't matter if you have stuff in your graveyard now because you're going to get wolves based on that many every time it attacks. And if you can somehow give it indestructible, then people will hate you.
Yes, very much so. Verdurous Gearhulk for 3 and a green. One of my favorite cards from Kaladesh. It's a big boy with he's a 4/4 trample. When he enters the battlefield, distribute 4+1 creature tokens among any number of target creatures you control. Again, being able to put those creatures on certain ones, so you can get the 3 things with different numbers and their power. It'd be awesome. Or you could just put it on this guy and have an 8/8 trample for 5. Scary.
Scary, scary. And Swiftfoot Boots, speaking of protecting that thing that you love on the battlefield, this gives it hexproof and haste. I think in this deck, probably the haste doesn't matter as much as the hexproof does, but it has only equip 1. So you're going to want to play this when you can pay for it to come out as well as equip it at the same time, so that people don't destroy what it is that they know you're going to protect.
Yeah, exactly. Unbreakable Formation for 2 and a white. It's a little instant that creatures you control gain indestructible till end of turn. So it's a great little combat trick. Or you can play it if you cast it during your main phase. So then you get to put +1 counter on each of those creatures, and they gain vigilance until end of turn. So it kind of depends on your situation whether you want to use this as a combat trick or just as a pre-combat buff. Give everything vigilance and +1/+1 counters.
Yep.
Tough decision.
And we have our first new one in this section, which is Kerbis. He is a nice little tree folk. He's got X in his mana cost. So anything that had X in its mana cost, we put in the 6 and up category. Why? It's technically only 2, but it's because you're not going to only pay it for 2. You're going to want to put some in the X, and if you're going to put something in the X, you might as well make it a lot. When it enters the battlefield, it enters with the number of 1/1 counters equal to the amount of mana that was spent to cast it. So this is interesting because it doesn't say equal to X. It says equal to the amount of mana spent to cast it. So that includes whatever you paid for X and the 2 pips, which is different than it normally is. And then remove a 1/1 counter from this dude and prevent all damage that would be dealt this turn to another target creature with a 1/1 counter on it. So it allows you to protect. It also, it says remove a 1/1 counter from it, but it doesn't say you can only do that once per turn. So if you need to protect 3 creatures, you can do that with 3 counters. So this guy you're going to want to have a lot of counters on. Yeah, but it does say another target creature, so he can't protect himself.
Somberwald Beastmaster for 6 and a green. It is a little 1/1 as well, but here it is again with creating lots of tokens. So you create a 2/2 green wolf creature token, 3/3 green beast, and a 4/4 green beast as well. And creature tokens you control have death touch. So that might be nice. Plus, it will fire off all those triggers of those 3 or more creatures.
Yeah,
different power levels.
Speaking of something that has Coven, Vigilance 3/3 for 3 is Dawnheart Wardens. At the beginning of combat on your turn, if you control 3 or more creatures with different powers, creatures you control get +1/+0 until the end of turn. So nice little card that's on theme there. Not super powerful, but it gives an extra +1/+0.
Okay, and so this, as far as the land goes for this deck, there are 37 in this deck, 12 forests, 12 plains, and then 13 non-basic. So it's the typical commander deck, lower cost lands in these decks. So that's a really great place you can start tweaking is in the land section. Then I'm gonna let Leslie tell you about some of the tweaks that we might have for you.
You've reached the moment we've all been waiting for, some of the tweaks. So we tend to suggest, we do have some higher power tweaks that we sometimes suggest, but the ones that we pick tend to be ones that are a little bit cheaper on the purse, your actual purse, not your mana cost purse. And we tend to make suggestions that keep your deck at a decent power level and don't just turn it into a completely different deck. So if you wanted to go with like a CDH deck or make this into a super competitive deck, then there might be some other stuff that you suggest, and we would love to hear those suggestions. Put them in the comments because anybody that's watching this video might glean something from you.
Mhm.
So we'd love to hear. The first one that we have, though, in our tweaks is the Ozolith. So this is typical in most 1/1 counter decks these days. It came out in Ikoria. It's only a 1 mana cost artifact. And whenever a creature you control leaves the battlefield, whether it's exiled or destroyed, if it had counters on it, you get to move those counters to this little artifact dude that's holding them for you.
Mhm.
And then at the beginning of combat on your turn, if it has counters on it, you may move all the counters from Ozolith onto target creatures. So it's just a nice way to keep those counters once you've built them up, and move them onto a creature.
Mhm.
The thing I don't like about the Ozolith is it doesn't allow you to distribute among creatures. It just goes
Yeah.
on one. So maybe choose your thing with flying, or like there's a lot of angels in this deck, or something with trample. Yeah, to get through. So that's the Ozolith.
Yeah. So Beastwhisper is it's coming down in price quite a bit, so because there's more printings of it. The Ozolith I think has creeped up a little bit as far as price goes, but it'll change too when it's out of standard too, I think maybe. But anyway, Beastwhisper is for 2 and 2 green, a 2/3 druid that whenever you cast a creature spell, draw a card. So good in this deck.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because remember, we only had 5 card draw in this. And
Yeah.
even though your commander has a lot, if people keep killing your commander, you can't rely on
Yeah.
that. So
Yeah.
Grouchs Uprising was another one that you could potentially put in here for card draw. It's an enchantment for 2 and a green. And when it enters the battlefield, if you control a creature with power 4 or greater, which you will, you get to draw a card. And then creatures you control have trample, which is really nice for getting through.
Mhm.
And whenever a creature with power 4 or greater enters the battlefield under your control, you get to draw a card. Continual card draw. This is, I would say, almost a must include in this deck.
Then we have one of the new Sagas Druid class. It is for 1 and a green. Whenever land enters the battlefield under your control, you gain a life, and you may play an additional land on each of your turns. So that will get you really rampy. Sorry, I should explain how Sagas work. So the first, as soon as you play it, it has the top ability there for the 2 mana, and you can pay 2 and a green to give it the next level 2. And then the third level, level 3 for 4 and another green on top of that, is when this class becomes level 3, target land you control becomes a creature with haste, and this creature's power and toughness are each equal to the number of lands you control. It's still a land.
Yeah. So this is nice, gonna help you with your mana ramp and just keep getting you some life and some mana if you find that you're struggling with that.
Yeah.
So a Johnny is always a good card in any Celestia deck, in my opinion, because he's a Johnny and he's so cute, and I just want to, scratch his little whiskers. But anyways, creatures you control have vigilance, which is awesome. You're probably not going to use his +1 unless you are trying to build him back up. But he has the -2 to put a 1/1 counter on each creature you control and a loyalty counter on each planeswalker you control. So planeswalkers, we don't have any in this deck other than this if you put him in, but you get to keep putting 1/1 counters on. So -2M +1M, -2M +1M a couple times, and just keep putting counters on your dudes.
Yeah. And the vigilance dudes. It's just crazy. So we got another card from the new set, Zagarda. It's so Zagarda themed. Champion of Light. For 1 a green and 2 white. It's a 4/4 flying with trample. And humans you control get +1/+1. And this one has Coven as well. Whenever Zagarda attacks, if you control 3 or more creatures with different powers, look at the top 5 cards of your library. You may reveal a human creature card from among them and put it into your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in random order. So, yeah, that's a good fit for this deck.
Yeah, this is a good example of a card that I think they meant for people to put in this deck, but they can't give you all the cards. So they have to make you like
some packs.
Buy packs somehow. So that's what they want you to search for. Good Fortune Unicorn for 1 and a green and a white. Everyone loves a Good Fortune Unicorn. He's a 2/2, and whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, you get to put a 1/1 counter on that creature. So you just automatically get counters on your creatures when you have this on the battlefield, which is great.
Pledge of Unity for 1 and a green and a white. It's a little instant for more of the spark that you can put +1 counter on each creature you control, and you gain life for each creature you control. Great way to change where the game is heading.
Yeah. And another Midnight Hunt card, Sun Gold Sentinel for 2. It's a 3/2, and whenever it enters the battlefield or attacks, you get to exile up to 1 target card from a graveyard. And then it has Coven for 1 and a white. Choose a color, and this guy gains hexproof from that color until the end of turn. So you can change that as people try to target it. And it can't be blocked by creatures of that color this turn. And so you can get past their flyers if you need to, and you activate only if you control 3 or more creatures with different powers. So it does require that 3 different power thing, but nice little ability that it has there.
Yeah. Then we've got the beautiful Shalai, Voice of Plenty, a 3/4 flyer, and you, planeswalkers you control, and other creatures you control have hexproof. Love this card. And for 4 and 2 green, you can put a 1/1 counter on each creature you control. It's not a cheap card, but it sure is a good card if you have
really
one.
good fit if you have one.
This
Yeah.
deck.
And the last tweak that we have for you today in this deck, of course, we could go on for ages and ages, but Dramoca's Command is an instant for 2, and you get to choose 2, which is nice to begin with. Prevent all combat damage. All damage target instant or sorcery spell would deal with this turn. Right. So you can protect your creatures, or you can target player sacrifices an enchantment, or you can put a 1/1 counter on target creature, or target creature you control fights another target creature you don't control. So it has some removal, it has some 1/1 counter synergy, it has some removal for enchantments, or you can prevent that instant or sorcery from killing your thing. So yeah, it's a really great card.
All right, so that's it for this time, guys, and thank you for watching and hanging out with us. We are available on YouTube and Twitch. Feel free to connect with us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. We'd love to hear what you think about these decks. What would you do? What would you change? Are we getting something wrong? That's it for this time. And in the meantime, we'll see you.
Tap those magic cards and have fun doing it. Bye, guys.